Okay, it's 8:02, and we sure want to be respectful of everyone's time, so we're going to get kicked off here. Thank you for being here. Jennifer Edenfield suggested this session, and I was kind of curious. I told Deanne when I sent her the email asking if they'd be willing to join. I didn't know if we'd have 440 or 400, but we have over 140 registered, and that's just amazing to me. And that speaks to the interest that is the 4-day week. So I do have just some quick slides that we'll look at. When we talk about the 4-day week, really what we're talking about in our group is its impact on CTE programs. And so I think that's going to be yes, and we will be recording this and posting it to the CTAT YouTube site. So the 4-day school week and its impact on CTE programs. And as always, when we do these sessions on Zoom, we record them. So if you do not wish to have your picture displayed to public view, such as on YouTube, we encourage you to participate. Just make sure that you turn the video off. Otherwise, your participation serves as consent to being posted on social media platforms. Okay, so let's talk about back in the day real quick. When we go back to the kind of 70s, that's a picture of me and my sisters there getting ready for the first day of school. Virtually every single school in the state had a 7-period day, and each period lasted 55 minutes, and every school went 5 days a week. Every school started after September 1st, and every school ended before June 1st. And that was uniform throughout the entire state. And it was just normal. That's what everyone did. Then sometime during the mid-90s, schools starting before September 1st, and they started ending after June 1st, and the whole world just went to not in a good place, it seemed like. But schools started going to something innovative so that they could move from the 7-period day to an 8-period day and allow the students to earn more credits. Then they transferred from the 7-period 55-minute schedule to an 8-period 90 minutes every other day schedule, which gets you the minimum of averaging 45 minutes every day. And so that was the minimum even then. So that's kind of when that change happened. And so now we are into what is really the next newest thing, in my opinion, and it's coming on with the same veracity that block scheduling did. And of course, that's the 4-day week, and that's why we're here. Here's what we know currently is that, and this is from the Student Attendance Accounting Handbook, is that the amount of time that a student must spend to generate FTEs or contact hours is defined in this chart. And so you have to have a minimum of 45 to 89 minutes a day is a V1. 90 minutes to 134 minutes every day is a V2, and 135 minutes plus is a V3. And this is set over a 2-week period. So another way of saying this is that you have to have 450 minutes over 10 days. And that's the way that we have functioned really since the 90s. And they came in and they even added clarification on the block schedule. And they put that in the Student Attendance Accounting Handbook. But basically it said you had to average 45 minutes a day over a 10-day school period. And that's the way that everyone is functioned. Well, so when you apply some higher level thinking skills, you get 45 minutes times 180 days equals 8,100 minutes, which is a V1 or 1/6 of a contact hour. And we know that it takes 6 V1 students meeting 45 minutes a day to make 1 contact hour. So if you have 6 contact hours, that would be 6 V1 students, 6 contact hours times 180 days, which is today's typical school year, you get 1,080. And if you read in the Student Attendance Accounting Handbook, it takes 1,080 contact hours to equal 1 FTE. And so that's how you get an FTE. And that's how we've gotten it for 30 years. Well, then schools started putting in the 4-day school week. And as a result of that, early in the fall, TEA put out this waiver for August, and this was due in December of 2022, and it required the schools to come up with a plan to how those students was going to earn a minimum of 8,000 minutes, targeting 8,100 minutes because of what we just learned. And we also know that this applies only to the 22-23 school year. And so that was that waiver. Had to have 8,000 minutes somehow. It only applied to the 22-23 school year, this current school year. And so now we have to do some predictions and proposals. So to that, I went to my Tony Romo action figure, Marcia Kilgore. And my Romo action figure says that it'd be a safe assumption to assume that the number of days per week language will disappear in the Student Attendance Accounting Handbook. And as a result of that, new language will come about that will say this: a V1 student is 8,100 minutes per year. A V2 student is 16,200 minutes per year. And a V3 student is 24,300 minutes a year. But the minimum length of a class period will remain 45 minutes because it's just not practical to have most CTE courses that last less than 45 minutes because of the amount of equipment that's got to be put up and cleaned up. And, so 45 minutes will remain the minimum for a CTE class. So we just apply a little more Grandview higher level thinking, and we know that we can get to our minutes required by minutes required divided by the days. So if you have 180 days, then you get 45 minutes a day because 8,100 divided by 180 is 45 minutes. 144 days, which is a typical 4-day week, comes up to 56.25. So you end up with 57 minutes. If you went to a 3-day week, somebody will try that in the future, I'm sure, then you would go to 108 days and a minimum of 75 minutes, so on and so forth. And so that's what we're looking at as far as being here. And we have 2 really special guests with us today. Probably the most successful district that I know of that has implemented this and has been one of the pioneers has been Mineral Wells ISD. And Deanne Hampton is the CTE director there, and Dr. John Kuhn is the superintendent. And Dr. Kuhn's been on Good Morning America more than Michael Strahan. But seriously, he's been interviewed nationally on this, and he is recognized nationally as one of the innovators. So Deanne and Dr. Kuhn, if you don't mind, I'm going to stop sharing, get into the gallery, and let you guys kind of tell your story.
Dr. Kuhn, do you want to go first?
Ladies first. Ladies first.
Okay. Basically, we ended up, this decision, I think, came around pretty quickly based on losing teachers to our other schools in our county. We're the biggest district in the county, and there's 5 other schools, and they had already decided to go to a 4-day week. And so that's kind of how this started, I believe. And Dr. Kuhn, feel free to correct me anytime I'm wrong. And so this discussion came about, and so we kind of just started sitting down talking about how can we make this work? What is it going to look like? On the CTE side of things, we conversed a lot with Lisa Harrison at Region 11. She was our main point of contact, and we had questions with TEA. We actually had 3 master schedules completed before we decided on one, and so our PEMS people were not happy with us, our counselors were not happy with us. But we decided on the 57 minutes a day so we could follow the guidelines that were in the SAW. We had heard that there was going to be guidance coming out later in the year, but we were starting school before that guidance ever came about. And so we went, I call it the safe way. We went with what was safe, what we knew would work. And so that's how we started with the 57-minute classes. As far as our schedule, we did one of our class periods in order to meet the time frame of the school day, dropped down to 30 minutes. So we do not have any CTE that takes place during that 30-minute time frame. That is used for tutorials, the House Bill 45 minutes, if we have any clubs or organizations that want to meet. And so that's kind of how that turned into that kind of a program. As far as next year, I will tell you, I think we're still planning the 4-day week, but we're looking more at doing the waiver and dropping down the time period a little bit per class period. The teachers, I will say, even the core teachers have liked the 57 minutes. They feel like they can get more accomplished in the class period and still have a few minutes for the students to work on their homework, with the hopes that grades improve as far as, missing assignments and things like that. So going into next year, we've already looked at a schedule. We are talking about dropping it. I think it's from 57 minutes to 49 or 50 minutes. So still giving as much time as we can, but we want to take that one period that's 30 minutes long. We're going to make it a full class period so we can add in CTE to that time frame. As far as numbers of students that were able to take CTE programs, we haven't seen a decline in that. It stayed pretty consistent. Our FTEs have remained the same, all of those kinds of things. So it hasn't been anything bad for us. It's been very successful, I consider. The teachers, I think our biggest hurdle were the teachers trying to figure out how to do 5 days worth of work in 4, because that's essentially how we saw it. So they had to learn to make all their lessons purposeful. So some of that extra fluff we had to take out and different things like that. It took them about 4 to 6 weeks to get into a routine that they felt comfortable with. But other than that, I mean, it's going well. The students like it. The teachers are loving it. They don't want to go back to a 5-day week. We do go Monday through Thursday. So we do not have school on a Friday. I believe athletics had a big input onto that part, if I'm not mistaken. That way, the one thing we did talk about is with it being a 4-day week, how can we minimize students being gone? So if you think about it now, if they're out for a day, then that's a lot. And so Fridays is a guaranteed athletic kids are going to miss and different things like that. So that's why we went Monday through Thursday.
Ms. Hampton, thanks a lot. That's good info, and a lot of that stuff. I was sitting here giggling because it reminded me of discussions that happened when block schedule came about. So.
It's yeah. I mean, really and truly, that's how I've related it from when we went from regular schedule to block schedule, and then block schedule back to regular schedule. It's a lot of the same issues essentially. I will tell you, our business partnerships have enjoyed it because on Friday, our kids that are in our practicums, they do get to work a full shift on a Friday. And so they stay with us on Mondays. Most of our kids stay on campus. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, they go out and do their work. And then if the businesses want them, which like most of them do, they do get that full shift in on a Friday too. So it allows the students to get more hours of hands-on learning.
Ms. Hampton, do you mind posting your schedule in chat or maybe posting your email where people can email you and get a copy of that? Master.
I will bring it up.
Thank you,
Dr.
ma'am.
Q, you want to kick in anything?
I do. So I could talk about this topic for a good long time, and a lot of what I would talk about probably might not be relevant to this group. I do want to say that the two biggest challenges we faced, one was like getting our pay grades reorganized, but CTE was the other big challenge, just getting the minutes in and making it all work. And so if your school district is looking at going to a 4-day week, very, very important that you have a CTE department, CTE director like I do, who is forward thinking and will really dig into this and solve problems. And that's what we had here. Deanne did a phenomenal job. And it hasn't been terrible, but there were just definitely some things that popped up that we had to figure out, so CTE is a key part of getting the 4-day week put into place. I don't want to waste y'all's time talking about things that are not necessarily relevant, but there are a lot of things to consider. There are a lot of political things to consider in your town as to whether or not the 4-day week, would be appropriate. Deanne was exactly right. Ours was a case of if you can't beat them, join them. We had several schools around us that went to the 4-day week, and we've worked really hard to try and raise pay, and we're pretty close to the Metroplex, and we want to attract and retain really good teachers. And so we did lose some teachers to some of the smaller schools around us that went to the 4-day week. And we just had that discussion with the board, and the timing was perfect. We did move quickly. We did our research. We looked at schools that had gone to the 4-day week and had data from before and after. And what we saw was there was no negative impact on student performance. We looked up research. The one bit of research I remember was from a 2011 edition of the Rural Educator magazine. It's a scholarly study of 4-day week schools in Colorado. And the conclusion was that a 4-day week or a 5-day week, neither one of them is detrimental to learning or more beneficial than the other to learning. So student performance is really not the thing you have to look at when you make this decision. You have to look at what does your community want? What does it do financially for you? There are some benefits to the 4-day week when it comes to student discipline rates and student attendance rates and things like that. Deanne's exactly right. It's been popular for our teachers and our students. It's also been popular in our community. It was a little bit controversial as we were debating it, as the board was getting ready to vote. But ever since the board vote, we really don't even talk about it much anymore. It's not very controversial. It's just the way we do business here. It seems to be helping the family unit. My teachers have more time on weekends with their family, but also our community members and parents have more time to do things like take little trips and stuff like that. But I'm very pleased with our academic performance, with our interim assessments and things going on right now. I'm also pleased with our CTE department. It was definitely there were definitely risks involved in making this change. We didn't go into it blind, thinking everything would be perfect. We knew there would be, potential pitfalls. But I've got a strong team that, kind of everyone pulled together and made this happen. I would say, we're committed for sure for next year. And Anna ISD, they recently adopted the 4-day week. And one of the things that their superintendent board said was it's a 3-year, we're committed for 3 years. And I've kind of, adopted that in my own head too, to communicate to my board and my community that we're going to give it at least 3 years and see how things are going at that time. There is one thing I want to throw out that we're doing that's a little unique here. And my board was concerned about daycare availability for parents, who are going to have to find something on Fridays. So we open one campus on Fridays for students from pre-K through 4th grade that need a place to go. We have an application process during the summer. And our student population is 3,351 kids. So between pre-K and 4th grade, it's probably 12 or 1,500. And we had 51 kids sign up for that. We call it optional Friday remediation. So that daycare need or that argument, the daycare argument is a lot of people just assume there's hundreds and hundreds of kids who their parents are going to really struggle to find a place for them on Fridays. That really doesn't bear out. In fact, you would think it would, but that's not what we found. That's not what some of the schools we talked to found either. That said, those 51 kids really did need a place to go. I say that we're down to 37 that are coming on a regular basis. The other thing I'll say about Fridays, so on the optional Friday remediation, that's just 22 Fridays, and we pay teachers to work that. We pay a principal to work that. We do it just like we do summer school. But we do have 4 Fridays that are accelerated instruction Fridays, including this coming Friday. So that's our House Bill 4545 time. All employees have to work on those 4 Fridays. And then we also have 6 or 7 Fridays that are professional development days. All employees have to work on those days too. So there are smattering of Fridays that the adults have to come and work. All the other ones, the 22 I mentioned earlier, those are student staff holidays. The only staff that work on those other Fridays are the ones that are paid to come up and work the optional Friday remediation. So, that's everything on my heart about this. I'm happy to answer any questions anybody might have.
Dr. Coon, I have one question, then we're going to turn you loose here. did the teacher stay on 180-day contracts?
No, our teachers are on what we call 10-month contracts. We don't specify the number of days in the contract language. They're working 160 something, and we left their pay the same. We don't have the financial resources of some of the schools to our east as you get closer to Metroplex, so we can't necessarily come up with money to pay the same as some of those bigger schools in more affluent areas. But what we have been able to do is keep our pay level and reduce the number of days so that a person's daily rate increases. We also have a pretty high percentage of low income students and families. And so one of the things I think about often is the number of our kids who hold down jobs. Giving them a Friday to go in and get some more hours is potentially helpful for their families as well. So when we went to the 4-day week, I was never an advocate, or I thought it was gimmicky. I thought it was something that just little tiny, 6-man football team schools would do. And I had seen it, and I was in Region 9. I was at Perrin for 6 years, and I'd seen some little schools go the 4-day week. And the first one around us was Gordon ISD, which is a pretty small school. And when they did it, it still didn't register on my radar screen. I just thought, well, yeah, I mean, if you're small enough, you can have those individual conversations with your community members and stakeholders and get a good feel of whether or not it's doable. But in a town our size, 14, 15,000 population, in my mind, it just was not ever really feasible. And until we really, this is the honest truth. We lost one specific teacher who was a veteran here, and it broke my heart and broke some of my board members' hearts. And she went to Grayford ISD, which had just gone a 4-day week. And so I just told my board, this may be something we need to at least talk about. And as we were having that discussion, my community, Grayford is close enough to us that there were Facebook groups saying, hey, Grayford went to the 4-day week. Do you think Mentor Wells should? And so I started watching that scuttlebutt, that conversation on Facebook. And there was a poll. We didn't put out the poll. It was a third party group, and they put out this poll. And I remember it had over 1,000 responses, and it was 72% in favor. And that's when I said, okay, this is a real conversation now. It's not just a gimmick. And that was our starting point. And then it was a matter of doing the research and talking it through with our board. And, the 4-day week's probably not for every community. It's some communities aren't going to want it or need it or like it, but it did fit the bill for us. And I do not regret it at all. And there's really not a lot of negatives. The CTE piece and the human resources piece, there's a lot of legwork that you have to do to make those work. But once you've done that and you've got it set up, we really feel like it's the right fit for us. And again, we're watching student performance to make sure there's no detriment there, and we're not seeing it right now.
That's incredible. I appreciate you both. And Dr. Kuhn and I visited a little bit in September about this, and with the amount of success y'all were having around, and the word spreads. And so there's going to be more districts go to it. So thank you both, Ms. Hampton, Dr. Kuhn. And if anybody has a question for them, let's go ahead and get questions for them out of the way, and then that way they can bail out if they need to.
Multiple are in the chat, Mark.
Ma'am?
There are multiple in the chat.
Oh, thanks, Lisa. I can't read those when I'm spotlighting. Federal, well, that was one. How do, Dr. Kuhn, this may be for you. How does it affect your hourly employees like admin assistants and clerks?
We just reduced the number of hours they work, and we adjusted their hourly wage so that they didn't lose any money.
And then do you run buses on the days that you have the open campus, the remediation?
No, our optional Friday remediation, we don't run buses. We do feed on those days. But no, we opted not to run buses. And I'm be completely straightforward. We didn't make it. We didn't go out trying to get people to sign up for Friday school, right? We made it available. We had a paper application process. We didn't do an electronic application process. We wanted, if somebody was going to sign up for this, we wanted them to take ownership. One of the conversations we had, sometimes one of the challenges of operating a public school system is a sense of entitlement where everybody feels like, well, it's my right to go to school. And we wanted to flip that model on its head for these Fridays and have parents and students both understand that coming up on Fridays is more of a privilege than a right. That's why we named it optional. We wanted to make it clear that this is not a school day, and we don't consider it daycare. We consider it an opportunity for you to come and get remediation. But we wanted ownership on the shoulders of the parents and students more than on the school district for that day. So we don't run buses those days, but we do feed. And since I'm talking about food, that's also been a big discussion item is, what about kids who are low income kids that were depending on those meals on Fridays for school? And we've partnered with Backpack Buddies, which is a local charity. They were sending meals home for Saturdays and Sundays, and we were able to work with them and kind of talk them into sending a third set of meals home for Fridays also. So on Thursdays, we send home Backpack Buddies for 3 days. And, to get them to do that, we offered to take over transporting those meals. So we'll send our maintenance guys to their, they pack all the meals and do all that, but we send our maintenance guys to their place. We pick up those backpacks or those bags and we bring them to our campuses and we do the dispersing, and that helped them. And that when we offered to do that, they were more than willing to throw in that third day of lunch. We're very fortunate to have their partnership.
Awesome. And then one other question, who does the remediation? I assume that's your teachers because they're all required to work that day. Is that correct?
So on the optional Friday remediation, we've hired 4 teachers. We pay them X dollars an hour, same as what we pay for summer school. And they lead that remediation. Again, it's for pre-K through 4th grade. We've got currently 37 students attending. We have one principal who volunteered to open up her campus. And I think we have an aide or 2, a paraprofessional or 2 that work that day as well.
Julie, did that get that question answered for you?
On the accelerated instruction days, it's our teachers. They provide that House Bill 4545 remediation on those accelerated instruction days, the 4.
And then I think you answered the question about classified employees did not become part-time and lose benefits.
No, nobody lost any benefits. They just got raises. They got hourly raises.
All right. Any other questions? Ms. Murray, you think you can talk old Todd into going for 4 days?
We're kind of sitting around to see what Little Elm does and some of the big districts around us. We're hoping we have 1 more year, but we're looking at it. First big school that goes, we'll have to jump on.
I saw a question about federal holidays on Mondays, and I just want to address that. We take Labor Day and we take Martin Luther King Day. Those are only Monday holidays. And another interesting thing, if you look at your current calendar, if you're in a 5-day-a-week school district, you really don't go 5 days a week. You have lots and lots of 3- and 4-day weeks during your regular calendar. So most of our Fridays off, not most, but a big chunk of our Fridays off. Well, a lot of those used to be Tuesdays off or Wednesdays off for professional development day or whatever. When the state went to the 57,600 minutes, sometimes to get your 180, to get your calendar built, you're kind of nowadays you're kind of taking we were taking random days off just to make your days add up. So we took all those random days and put them on Fridays. So it's really what we saw with our calendar that we built was we've added 13 days off more than we used to have. I don't know if that makes sense, but
It does, yeah, and it makes perfect sense. And Amanda is asking, do y'all provide a snack? And I assume this is to the elementary kids since the day is that much longer.
I don't even know the answer to that. Our day's really not all that much longer. I think it's 30 minutes longer.
I was gonna say at the high school, we only added 10 minutes to our schedule. And so I don't really think it adjusted much anywhere.
I do know of some schools that really, really lengthened their day. And also a couple of those schools I know of, their teachers are not loving it. And there's a lot of different ways to do it. There are some schools that they'll go sometimes on a Friday, like on a home football game day. And if you lengthen your school day and you still go on certain Fridays, those 5-day weeks, the feedback I've gotten from some teachers in some of those districts is pretty tough on teachers. I will say too, we utilize the professional development waiver to reduce the number of instructional minutes that we must offer.
Any other questions for Dr. Coon before we let him go?
I have a question about transportation, if you don't mind.
Please.
We actually just approved the 4-day week here in Lavernia this week. But one of the things that our transportation person thought he had read, so our ag students are very active and travel constantly. On those Fridays, if they needed a ride up to the school, they have to be picked up from their house in a school bus, or how are y'all handling getting those students to the school? Is it just the family's responsibility?
I'll defer that to Deanne, but I think the answer is yeah, we don't transport kids on Fridays.
No, if it's it's not a normal school day, so it's like any other activity, any other sport, the parents have to get them there in order for them to go do whatever they need to do.
Okay.
We actually might need to start doing what y'all are doing to increase the student participation. That's a great idea.
Well, I mean, they're open to the idea of doing like a coach, like if it's a football team or something like that, you've got a lot of students. But if you've got one team of 4 students traveling for an ag competition, I didn't know there was such a thing in place that the students, we can drop them off in a school vehicle, but we can't pick them up from their house and bring them on school grounds or take them on a school activity unless they're in a bus. So we're trying to figure that piece out, just for travel purposes.
When you say on a bus, do you mean basically employees can't pick them up in their personal vehicle? Is that what you're talking about?
No, they said that he found that it was like even a school, like the ag truck or
Yep.
A Suburban. They can't pick them up from their house in that. They have to pick them up from their house in a bus.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Because route rules are different than, right.
Can you share where you found that? Because I've never seen that.
I didn't find it. My transportation person said that so I'm trying to figure out where that verbiage exists, because truthfully, that would hurt us, especially for our ag students, because they're all over the place all the time. So I'm trying to figure out if that is really a thing, or if he's reading into it maybe a little bit incorrectly, if you will. To hopefully that's not a thing that we could pick kids up if we had to, just in a school vehicle.
The correct info for that should be in the student attendance accounting handbook. There's a transportation section.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Yeah, you bet. Dr. Kuhn, please feel welcome to hang around as long as you'd like. But if you need to get, I'm sorry.
Hey, Mark,
Jennifer.
I did have a question.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, sorry. How are y'all handling dual credit? Because we have a lot of dual credit CTE programs. And so did y'all have to go back and try to rework things with the college, or did you just leave it the same and just try to, and just kind of follow, I guess, the rule of it's dual credit and, they're teaching the class?
Yeah, I think we got lucky that Weatherford College doesn't have classes on Fridays. So nothing really changed for us on dual credit. I think I'm right about that.
You're right.
Awesome.
So y'all are, even though you have the 4-day, because I have a community college that's a 4-day week also, you still did your 8 classes, even though they have Monday, Wednesday, Tuesday, Thursday classes?
A lot of our dual credit students will go to what we call the Go Center, which is just a room full of computers with a facilitator, and they take their college classes. It's not simultaneous. I don't know that we have any simultaneous college classes. I've got a senior that he's getting an associate's degree in high school, and he takes tons of college classes. And it's kind of catch can. When you've got a hole in your schedule, you're going to go in there and get on the computer and do your college stuff. So we have a lot of flexibility, maybe that other people may not have.
Okay, see, we offer welding and we offer medical assistance, and they travel to our college. So that's why I was curious to see how your schedule would look, because their classes are longer anyway. All right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So yeah, that'd be an issue you'd have to tackle. I don't know how you'd fix that.
I was gonna say, on our end, it's our kids travel to Weatherford College 2 days a week. So Tuesdays, Thursdays. And so it really hasn't affected us because it's built into their schedule anyway. So, we've not seen a change on our end with it either.
Lots of issues. Hey, again, Dr. Kuhn, thank you so much. Stay as long as you want. And thank you guys for providing that information.
Happy to do it. I did see a question about school day hours, and I will tell you, I'm looking at our calendar. This current year, elementary runs from 7:40 to 3:50. Junior high runs, 7th and 8th grade are a little bit different. 7th grade runs from 8:05 to 4:15. 8th grade runs from 8:10 to 4:20. And high school runs from 8:10 to 4:20, to answer that question. And Mark, I appreciate the invite. We've enjoyed it. Happy to happy to do it. And if anybody wants to email us or anything, my email is jkuhn@mwisd.net, and Deanne's is dhampton@mwisd.net.
Thanks to both of you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, so anyway, so I have as much time as you guys want. If y'all want to share ideas and kick things around, the floor is yours.
Do you have any idea how many districts around the state are moving to a 4-day week?
No, ma'am, I don't have the data, but if we have 70 people sitting in here, can you just put the name of your district in if you're going to a 4-day week or seriously looking at it? And we'll get an idea of that percentage from those 70.
Mark, I've had a lot of districts asking me if there's any information on people doing this long-term. And the one place I've been able to point to them to is Denver ISD, which is the entire Denver Metroplex, is all one big school district. They went to a 4-day many years ago. And they did it really as because of the heating in the schools and the transportation costs and things, and to move it to less. And so if you're kind of looking at some place to see, data on somebody who's been doing it for a while, they are probably the largest long-term that I'm aware of doing that. The one downside is a lot of that data is going to be affected by COVID. So it's really hard to look at data in these last few years very comparatively because data has been so skewed by COVID.
I know, Mark, that Athens has been doing that. It has been doing 4-day week for a while because we went to Athens and really talked to them when Lone Oak went to 4-day. And I think this is Lone Oak's 4th year. I think it's either 3rd or 4th, but I'm pretty sure it's 4th year that Lone Oak's been 4-day, and they have gone Fridays off and they've really enjoyed that. And they have not seen a dip in accountability measures like state testing and that kind of stuff. But again, we had the middle of COVID happened all at the same time too. So, but they've enjoyed it. And then I know that Bowles ISD is in either their 2nd or 3rd year as well, and they do Mondays off. And they do that because their rationale is that they want to make sure that Fridays, the coaching staff also get a break, and that students get a break, rather than if we have students that have games on Friday nights and that kind of stuff, they don't actually get that relief. So that's their rationale for doing that. It works both ways. I could definitely see in the dual credit conversation how if you had a dual credit situation where the courses didn't meet on Fridays, that might be an argument to go with Fridays off. So, but there are a lot of districts. I have at least one additional district of my 13 that has already approved to go to 4-day week next year. So they'll be doing first time next year, and they're going to take Mondays off. So it's a lot around the state, a lot for sure.
Interesting. I just wonder if when we get a higher percentage of districts that have a 4-day week versus the districts that don't, how much benefit are you going to really reap if teacher recruitment's kind of the biggest thing? I thought. Who else has something good to share? Jennifer, what discussions are y'all having there in Galveston? Are y'all just kind of starting the process, or are y'all pretty deep into it, or what?
Well, we have a charter school on the island that is voting on it, I think this week in the school board, and pretty much, I mean, from my understanding is that it's kind of a done deal. That they're very much in favor. And so then that started the conversation here in Galveston. And that's when, I brought up my concerns of, the CTE piece, dual credit only. But again, dual credit's a whole different deal for my side, but they had initially said 50 minutes. And I said, well, that does not work. And, you know, I showed them the math with the 57 minutes. And so they were like, oh, okay. And so, you know, just having those conversations and just trying to bring those things ahead, because, you know, it's kind of like what the superintendent was just saying, you know, making sure that everybody's in those meetings. You know, I just want to make sure that I'm not going to all of a sudden lose my funding, you know, and we have a lot of CTE courses, and a lot of our CTE courses also are dual credit or continuing education. So just trying to make sure that I've got everything covered from my side whenever they do decide whatever direction that they're going to go in. I did have a question though. I know there were a lot of districts that were saying that they're currently doing this. Are they at 57 minutes, or did they do the waiver to do, you know, a shorter class period type thing? And my understanding though was that the waiver was just for the 22-23 school year. So is there a new waiver that all of a sudden has come out for next year? Because I heard somebody say something about the minutes.
Yeah, and I'm basing this on a conversation I had yesterday, and from the most reliable source that there is, it doesn't look like there will be a waiver next year. Next year, you're going to have to just get the 8,100 minutes, however you do that.
But that won't. Sorry, Mark, I don't know if you can hear me, but that
Yeah.
won't be within a certain amount of days requirement, right? Like it's not going to have the 10 days within 2 weeks anymore.
That's right, Julie.
Okay.
So you'll take the 8,100 and divide it by the number of days that you're offering, and that's how long your CTE classes have to be. You know, CTE is really the only one that has a seat time requirement because of the contact hours needed for FTE alignment.
A number of districts had added days to their calendar as a response to COVID, so that they had the flexibility if they needed to take days off. They had kind of extended calendar and took different break times and things. And a number of those districts that lend it to them already having that extended calendar to meet those 8,100 minutes. So you could do this both ways. You can, and a number of them in our region, the smaller ones have done it. They are like Mineral Wells. They're doing the waiver for PD. And so they already had that built in into their system. So how big a change it is kind of depends on how you're currently running your system. And I think some of the block schools are going to find it isn't going to be as big a difference because they already are doing, you know, some of those extra minutes on that AB block. The ones that are having a bigger struggle changing it are the ones that do accelerated block, where they are doing are kind of a mixed bag, where some of the periods are a block schedule, but maybe the first and last period are a 1-period class all year long. Those are a little bit harder for them to figure out how to adjust time.
I have one district that said we're staying at 57 minutes because it's easier to leave our schedule at 57 and let the state change around us, and we don't have to change it every single year. And then I have other districts that are saying, no, we're going to go ahead and go with the minutes waiver for this year, and then we'll see what they say with all the legislative changes and everything for next year.
I think one thing you guys need to consider too is if you're on a block schedule, your requirement's not going to be 57 minutes. It's going to be 114 minutes every other day. So, you know, you got to get, if you're meeting every other day, you still have to get to 8,100 minutes. So make sure that you're taking that into account.
Now, did I hear Julie Anderson right in saying that there's not going to be a number of, I just want to make sure I understand it correctly, 8,100 minutes, if they go with that, 8,100 minutes, it doesn't matter how many days we divide that by. Did I understand Lisa and Julie saying that correctly? So as long as we reach 181, or excuse me, 8,100 minutes throughout the school year sometime, that's kind of what they were projecting them coming out as saying. Am I understanding, am I repeating that correctly?
I
Yes.
I have heard no guidance come out that says for sure what they are going to do next year.
Yeah.
The waiver was written, when it actually had a drop down as they were completing it for this year that showed 3 years, but then there was a side note on the instructions that said you could only use it for the 1 year. So I'm not sure why it was built with 2 other years, even in that drop down list. We're until we hear, there's multiple departments that will work together at TEA to come with what that final language is. Will they just update the SAW? And that's probably the cleanest way is, that they just change, just like they did with the block schedule, and they put very clear language just written in there versus the waiver. But nothing formally has released that I'm aware of.
It has not been released. But that is what's being proposed to the amendment to the SAW. But remember, when that student attendance county handbook is changed, it will have to go out for public comment. And so if you have input, that's the time to do it for that change. And that does make a difference. And so make sure that you keep an eye out, and we'll send that out as soon as we get it. And I know Lisa and all the service centers will do the same, but that's SAW. It's certainly not formal. All I'm saying is what's been proposed to the SAW, and that's to go to 8,100 minutes or B1.
And I have a question and also a comment. So one of my comments is only that the stories we have heard is that there are some individuals who are not fans of 4-day weeks that live in Austin. I'll just put it that way. So I'm always mindful of what we kind of put forth in terms of what's going to be definitive in nature. Like Mark said, it's all kind of proposed right now. And so kind of just be mindful of that.
Amen. All you have now is the word of the Tony Romo action figure, nothing else.
Well, I know that the SAW is not normally completely finalized until November because it's always a moving target that we have to make those decisions, this time of year for a set of rules that won't be solidified until November or December. Are any guidance on what, knowing that this is being recorded right now, you might not want to answer, but in future months, any guidance, Lisa, Julie, Mark, you guys have that, we should go by for the future would be, I won't put you on the spot. You don't have to answer that right now, but certainly just keep us updated, because if we need to switch the world around, we've got a few districts to have to do that. Thank you so much for your help, guys.
Julie and Lisa may have heard a lot better stuff, or Spencer, but my thought right now is that you have every bit of information there is to be had on the topic. Do one of you guys have something else, Lisa?
I don't mean to butt in front of Lisa, but the only thing I kind of guide people is the only thing definitively right now is that 57 minutes per class period will work, right? And so if you're trying to make the best decision, because people were saying, oh, well, there's a waiver process, and we were told it's a competitive waiver process, and that if you don't provide adequate proof, your waiver may not be approved. And I haven't heard personally anything back specifically stating approval or denial of waivers, and I don't know if any of you have that have schools that applied for the waiver. But so when we're providing guidance, the only thing I feel that we can say definitively is that you want to be sure you're going to get to that CTE funding point, you have 57-minute periods. And I mentioned in the comments, some people went from 8-period to 7-period days so that they wouldn't have to extend their day a whole bunch. They could kind of keep it where it was, but they're reducing the number of periods, and they're worried about, people are like, what about credits and schedule space? Well, if we've moved CTE down into 7th and 8th grade, then we should still have some of that flexibility in our schedules. If you talk to most CTE teachers, they kind of feel like their classes are dumping grounds a little bit anyway. And so, you know, if we have good places for them to go their junior and senior year, then that shouldn't be an issue in most cases.
Thanks, Julie. Those are great points.
I mean, realistically, when we were looking at this last fall, the waiver didn't exist. So our last summer, at the end of the summer, so when Deanne and I started kind of quick meetings, because it was a very quick turnaround on the decision there, that, you know, we decided that the best thing was to err on the side of caution and make sure you were meeting the minutes, because there was no way to know. There are a lot of districts, not a lot, there was districts across the state who had already been doing 4-day week. They'd been doing it under the radar and not meeting minutes. And that was problematic because they were kind of sharing guidance to other districts on how great this was. But when it started to become more widespread and it was then more on TEA's radar, they were realizing districts were not meeting the minutes. And I think that is why the 4-day waiver came out for this 1 year, because they realized that after the year had already started. And so, as sometimes happens, you know, sometimes those first people out of the gate to try something end up having to adjust because, you know, they run into some issues with it. And so that was kind of how that had played out.
Lisa, we had one of our districts that actually we got guidance from TEA. Julie helped us through that, and we actually got wording from TEA that said, yes, it's only 45 minutes because last year, that's what the guidance said. It was 45 minutes over a 2-week time period. Or that the over 2-week time period was implied, but it was never actually stated anywhere. So we actually had emails from TEA saying we were good to go at 45 minutes. Well, when the funding came in for projections for this year, we were down like 300,000. So we kind of said, whoa, what happened? You know, and went back to TEA, and we were, you know, part of those questions said, hey, can we get a waiver? What can we do? And apparently they had quite a few districts that did the same thing, that said, oh yeah, you do have an email from us saying you could have done that and not been harmed. And okay, we'll hold you to that. We'll let you do waivers this year. So we're really thankful that they let us do that this year. But like I said, I had 2 districts that stuck with the 57 minutes, but that one I was really concerned about.
Thanks, Andrea. That's interesting. Mr. McClure, that waiver is not always money in hand, is it? That letter from TEA. Be still in here. Who else? Boy, those are great comments. Lisa, thank you. Thank you for the input.
Hey, Mark, this is Jennifer. Hey, is there any way, because I know somebody was asking about getting the recording, but is there also a way that you could copy the chat and then send that out as well? Because since I'm not able to be physically on Zoom because I'm blocked, I can't see really anything that's occurring on my phone. And I'd like to be able to see the questions and answers, if that's okay.
Yes, I will send the chat out to everyone that registered, because I'll capture that email list, and everyone that registered, I'll send the chat out to. How's that sound?
Perfect. Thank you.
You bet. And that'll get Deanne and Dr. Coons emails in there as well.
I was just gonna say too, whenever Lisa mentioned, she was like, we couldn't have done this without Lisa. We talked quite a bit. Our turnaround from decision to implementation was probably less than 4 or 5 days. And so we kind of played catch up as we went. So I would strongly encourage you to have all your ducks in a row as you're planning this. Because basically, like on a Thursday, I got a phone call and asked a few questions, and the school board meeting was Monday night. And so definitely have those conversations with those that need to have it, and make sure everybody's in the same room. Because like I say, it turned into a whole lot more than any of us ever thought that it would. So, and make use of those contacts at your regional service centers, because we couldn't have done it without Lisa.
Deanne, Miss Wonders has put a great question in there. Has that helped with the need for subs, the 4-day week there at Mental Wells?
Absolutely. In all honesty, and this was one of the factors that Dr. Kuhn presented to the board. We don't have teachers out as much because they know they have Fridays. So, some doctors' offices don't work on Fridays, but a lot do. Basically, we even started a hashtag with the school district, Family Friday or something. And so our attendance is better with our faculty. We don't have as many people out for various reasons because they do try to do it on Fridays. I'll be honest with you, our student attendance is better. One of the things we talked about was that, we don't have school on Friday. So think about your Thursday night games, your football games that are out of town and the kids aren't getting home 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning. They're not, a lot of times those are the ones that don't come to school on Friday. So our attendance is better both ways, student and teacher.
Thanks, Ms. Hampton. Anyone else before I stop the recording have something that they think would benefit viewers on YouTube or the group in general? Well, I'm about to stop the recording because that keeps us right at an hour, and we'll hang on a little bit if someone has some off the record questions. But thank you guys so much. A special big thank you to Jennifer Edenfield for suggesting this session. And I didn't know if we would have 440 or 400, but it's been a great turnout. Dan, thanks to you and Dr. Kuhn, and thank you guys so much for providing. It was just incredible information you have. And one of the, I think that we got a good representation for what the do's and don'ts are and lessons learned. And that's something we're going to need more of. And if we need to have another one of these in the later in the spring, we'll certainly have it. I mean, it's just a matter of setting up the Zoom. So thank you guys so much, and we'll hang around. But for those of you leaving, don't have to go home.